Political Editor Andrew Clennell joins me here in the studio. And interesting to finish question time and focus on the story that you broke on the lack of offloading shares by a few ministers. In fact, one of them had to give a further explanation, and clearly the Prime Minister had spoken to Kristy McBain about all of that. Just bring our viewers up to date on where that story is.
It seems clear from the Prime Minister's answer there that after our story revealing Kristy McBain was in breach of the Code of Conduct, the PM personally contacted her to see what was happening. He says he's satisfied. The Code of Conduct, as we reported last week, was introduced in July by Anthony Albanese, early July, and it prevents ministers from holding shares, and if they have to divest those shareholdings, they can't do it to a family member. Kristy McBain had 7 shareholdings. Up until last week, she divested them to her husband. So she was in breach as far as I can see. So the opposition attacked, but Anthony Albanese said, it's okay, I've accepted her explanation, and now they're getting rid of the shares or have just got rid of them. But it was an interesting one. It certainly hasn't been a good start to the job from the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and the Territories. Have a listen to this question time exchange.
Disclosed ownership of shares in 8 different companies and later sought to transfer them to her husband, something the code specifically prohibits. Prime Minister, is the Minister in breach of the Prime Minister's ministerial code of conduct?
The Minister rang me about the circumstances. The Minister is seeking to rectify that at the earliest possible opportunity, and that's the way that it should work.
After I was sworn in as a minister, I divested myself of shares by transferring them to my husband. On reviewing the Code of Conduct, and after making some additional inquiries, I realised that that was not an adequate form of divestment. My husband and I at all times fully intended to sell the shares. However, I am the first to admit that that should have taken place sooner. I take my responsibilities as a minister very seriously. We've now divested ourselves of all the shares to ensure that there's no conflict of interest. Since the shares are now sold, I consider the matter closed.
So, Kieran, as we know, 2 other ministers were caught up in this story. Tim Ayres, who sold his 2 shareholdings, he told me on Friday, but again, that's taken nearly 2 months. And Bill Shorten, who says he inherited some credit union shares from his mother and he's having trouble disposing of them. These ministers had plenty of time. If they're all about transparency and they're all about accountability, they need to be doing better on these matters.
Especially when you set the rules yourself. I mean, the government set the rules, the Code of Conduct, the Prime Minister set those rules. So as a minister, one of your top priorities would be when you get sworn in, surely, and I think Kristy McBain admitted that there, it was an oversight that she should have rectified earlier.
Well, it's surprising for Kristy McBain. She was Mayor of Bega. They have codes of conduct all the time, councillors. It goes with local government. So why didn't you read that code of conduct properly? It's sloppy at best. I mean, it clearly says in there in one clause you can't divest to a family member. She did. It was only when it was pointed out to her that her husband moved to sell the shares.
And as you say, when it is a government that in opposition and in government has made such a big deal out of being upfront, no secrecy, being transparent, well, if you're going to talk a big game, you've got to deliver.